How does the IDF come up with a number of Hamas fighters that have been killed so far? Do we know any numbers at this stage?
We assume approximately 8,000 fighters. It could be plus 1,000. The issue is, of course, is that because each of these fighters is surrounding themselves with a blanket of civilians and are often located underground underneath their homes, it's difficult to come up with an assessment. The most accurate way of doing so is based on intelligence. It's based on interrogations that happen afterwards, satellite photographs, and we try to come up with a number, not only so that we have a number, but so that we can try to understand how we are pinpointing terrorists and not civilians. Again, this is very difficult because Hamas is playing the opposite game. They're trying, every time the number of civilians goes up, I guarantee you, Hamas are in their tunnels celebrating, because every time one of their civilians is killed, they know the world is going to blame Israel instead of focusing on Hamas. And so this is the disproportionate situation that we're in.
How difficult is it to destroy Hamas and, furthermore, the ideology?
The ideology of Hamas is rampant. We've seen that this is a fundamentalist ideology, and it exists in other places throughout the world. I mean, Iran, which happens to be Shiite and Hamas is Sunni, Iran and Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis, also forces in Iraq, all share a common understanding of a absolute distaste and hatred towards the West, a real fundamentalist religious view, and therefore it is pervasive throughout the entire world. What we, in terms of defeating Hamas, that will help to defeat their ideology. But I was with Nicole yesterday in a tunnel, a massive tunnel that goes underneath Gaza. I know that you had the video on your screens, and it is so big and so thick and branching into so many areas under so many homes that this is what it is to face Hamas. They are underneath shafts, they're in control rooms, they're behind corners, they're inside civilian buildings, and therefore it's going to take time. The more time we put in, the less lives of Israeli soldiers will be lost. Hopefully the less civilian life will be lost, and we can reach our goal. But time is really going to be a key factor here.
US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin called the Israeli Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant to talk about Israel's military campaign in Gaza, certainly on preparations for the stabilisation phase that will follow major combat operations. I believe Antony Blinken is going to make another visit to the Middle East. How much pressure is there on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from the US, from Europe, and in terms of the situation and how what we're seeing go on in Israel and with Hamas?
I can tell you that the international community, as in most things, are divided. We have a lot of support, particularly from the United States and a number of its allies. And there are other countries who weigh into this at the end of the day. And the United States very much respects this, and we have a lot to learn from them. We in Israel are the ones who are going to be left to live on a border with Gaza. It's the 250,000 people in Israel that are going to try to put their children to sleep after a horrendous 80 days, 90 days, and the children are going to look at their parents and say, are those people who murdered our cousins still out there? And those parents are only going to go back home, and if they say, no, they're no longer out there. And so we really are the ones that are left with this issue. What I can tell you from the Prime Minister and from the Minister of Defense and the head of the Army, the Chief of Staff, ultimately speaking, we are an autonomous country. We have a clear dedication to protecting the Israeli civilians while taking care of, as much as possible, the horrific situation in Gaza and trying to protect Gazan civilians. But it is difficult, but that is our first priority, Israeli civilians, so that they can go to sleep at night.
And just finally, I've been reading over the last couple of hours that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been talking to families of hostages. So far, one hostage freed through military action, the others via military negotiation. What more do we know about these hostages? And are you aware, or do you know about the conversation that he is potentially having with the families of the hostages?
I've read press reports as well that there were conversations, and the Prime Minister and all of the Israeli establishment have been in constant contact with those families. Again, I know families personally. We're such a small country. We all are really one kind of just large community. And these conversations are constantly going on. And it's very difficult because we have two goals. that are so hard to achieve. One goal is to bring home all of our hostages, which are being held deep underneath the ground in godforsaken, hellish conditions. And the other one is to defeat Hamas so that we don't have more hostages in the future. And this is an ongoing and developing pattern. We believe, and the state of Israel believes, that by pressing Hamas on the military field and pushing them into a corner, only when they have nothing left to lose will they release those hostages. It's not going to come out of kindness. It's, as the President of the United States, President Biden, said, it's going to become out of pressure. And that is where the military campaign and the hostage release come together.
We're hearing the IDF saying 3 soldiers have recently been killed in Gaza. Can you confirm this report?
Well, we had this morning announced 3 soldiers, and there were also 3 soldiers yesterday. Maybe by chance, I actually have close relatives. I was with them who know 2 of the soldiers who were killed. The conditions that these soldiers are fighting in, and again, I was in Gaza yesterday, are really incredibly difficult. I mean, it's not a video game, but it looks like one of these games where behind every corner there's a sniper. On the roads there's IEDs. There's tunnels where terrorists popping in and out, and you've got civilians going back and forth. And the difference is, of course, here it's real. And so these soldiers are performing incredibly well, but unfortunately our sons and our daughters are at great risk. But we're all in it for the same reason, so that hopefully there can be a peaceful Israel, a secure Israel in the future. And I hope that we'll see the rebuilding of Gaza without that Hamas ideology soon.
Major Doron Spielman, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.